welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Yamika, the Electrifying Educator. On this channel, we discuss teacher tips, tools, and tutorials. Today, we'll be talking about the 3 things you should consider when making instructional decisions for your students. If you're interested, keep on watching. Oh, and go ahead, smash that like button. It really helps my channel. Subscribe so you can join our team, and hit that bell so you receive post notifications and you never miss another video. Okay, let's get started. There are 3 things that you need to consider to make an informed, sound instructional decision for your students. Those 3 things are reviewing your state standards, data analysis, and knowing your students. So let's talk about the first one, state standards. So in many districts, they've already done the work for you. They have provided you with a curriculum that incorporates whatever your state standards are into the pacing calendar. Maybe you don't have that. I'm sorry if you don't. I've been there before. You're gonna be all right, okay? For those of you who have a district that provides the state standards on a pacing calendar for you, half of the work is done for you. However, I still suggest that you download your state standards in a document from your Department of Education so that you can have it for reference. The next thing that you need to consider are the process standards. The process standards are the way we want to develop the student in order for them to learn the skill. Very important. In math in Texas, for example, it tells you how you want the students to communicate, how you want them to show their thinking and their learning, and it listed, I'll input a picture, and it lists every way in which those students could represent their learning. The next thing you need to look at are the student expectation statements. In those statements, they will provide verbs. Those verbs will tell you what the student should do to show that they have learned the skills. So those 2 things are very important when you're analyzing your state standards in order to make a sound instructional decision. So after you identify the verbs that are in the state standards, that will help you build lessons. In order for the students to demonstrate learning, for example, multiple representations of a linear equation, I know that I'm going to have to provide them opportunities to graph, to solve from a word problem, to look at a table and identify, or from the equation. So those are the 4 representations. And in my lesson, based on that standard and the verb that was given to me, I know that I need to provide experiences for my students in order for them to master that skill. After you have created the lessons based on your state standards and you know the skills that your students will have to be able to master, you know the verbs, you've created your lessons, you're ready to go. The second thing you need to consider is the data. Once you have taught a lesson, there should be some type of assessment that takes place. I am a big believer in formative assessments. And so after you have given a formative assessment, there needs to be some analyzing of that data. How did my students do? Did they master the skills? Did they not master the skills? And the important part is what you do with that information once you analyze the data. Collecting and analyzing data should impact teacher actions and support student learning. And that's the key. If your students are showing that they did not master the skills, you have to do something different. I talk to teachers all the time and I share with them that if your data proves that your students did not master the skill, you cannot just move on. Listen, I know how many skills you have to get through. I know how much pacing you have for the first 9 weeks, the second 9 weeks. It can be overwhelming, but student learning is more important. I know we're under so many demands to make sure that our kids pass these state tests, and we've got parents and administrators and everybody that, are looking to us to work miracles sometimes. But the best educators, excellent educators, teach for student learning and not for any other reason. Now, the beauty about that is if you are really teaching for student learning, all the other will come because listen. I've been there with students that were told could not do it, should not do it, will not do it. But when you decide to really teach for learning, it will all work out in the end. Those scores will come back showing student growth and student mastery. So what else can data analysis do for you? How else can it support sound instructional decisions? Well, there are a couple different things that you can do with this data. It can affect student grouping. If you like to have collaborative groups in your classroom, your data is an awesome tool to create student groups. For example, if you use Kagan structures, data will help you identify who's your high, who's your medium high, your medium low, and your low to put them in the groups. Your data can also help identify those students who need enrichment. Not all students need remediation, baby.
Some of them need enrichment.
So, analyzing your data can let you know what categories each one of your students is in. Are they excelling? Are they right where they need to be? Or are they in need of some intervention and remediation? So the last thing that you need to consider in order to make a sound, informed instructional decision for your students is to know your students. No, really. You have to know your students. You'll be so surprised how meaningful this can be and how it can really help you make great decisions for your students. Knowing your students can mean a lot of different things. But here are the key things that you need to know in order to make instructional decisions. The first things are basic. So your demographics. You need to know where your students are coming from. Knowing your student demographic information can really help you when you are building your classroom culture and environment. Once you can build a culture and environment that breeds responsible learners, then that can help you make some really great instructional decisions. Another key important thing to know is your student data profile. So this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about data analysis. However, your student data profile, that's going to back up all the way to the beginning of that student's standardized testing career. And that's going to give you an overarching big picture of where that student is academically. You'll be able to see the rises and the falls, and it'll begin to help you put a picture together of who that student is and how you can grow them over the next year in your classroom. Some things to be aware of in a student data profile. You can't just look at the last year. That's good information. However, you need to look at the long term, what that child has looked like over the years of state testing, because a lot of things can happen. Last year could have been a peak. They had a really good teacher who provided them all of the things that they needed to be successful. Or if you go back 2 or 3 years, you might see a different picture. So it's very important to look at the entire profile, not just the previous year. And last but not least, most important to me, is building relationships with the students and the parents. In order to make the best instructional decision for every student, you have to know what works best for that student. And in order to know what works best for that student, you have to have a clear understanding of that student's personality. Are they quiet? Are they introverted? Are they extroverted? Will they work better with someone who will talk a lot or someone who is not very talkative? So knowing that student and using that data to make instructional decisions, I mean, it just all goes together. Like, I love it. Like, this is a fun topic to me. Like, making instructional decisions and watching the outcome after you have like tweaked everything that you do. Oh, I remember they like this, or they work better with this group of kids, and then rearranging things. It's like a puzzle. Like, I don't know. I love it. Anyway, what I'm saying is knowing your student will help you make very, very sound instructional decisions, along with knowing the data, along with knowing your state standards. So let's look at a case study. and put everything that we've talked about today into practice. So this is a real example from my real educator experience. So Miss Wilson has a class of 8th grade students. This class of 8th grade students had a very strong 7th grade background, great 7th grade teachers. However, this group of 8th grade students did not have a consistent 6th grade teacher. This group of students are pretty extroverted. They're very open, they like to talk, they like to play, they like to laugh, they like to have a good time. Their data coming in was not very strong. How can a teacher come into this group of students and have a positive impact, make sound instructional decisions to help them grow and perform successfully throughout the year, not just on the state assessment, but on the state assessment? So here are some things that I incorporated that year that really helped that group of students. I got to know them and I figured out, oh, y'all like to laugh, y'all like to play, y'all like to have a good time. So we created a classroom chant, and I've actually included this in one of my other videos, but it was something that they said every single class period at the end, and it was something motivational to help them really feel like in this classroom, I have to do my very best so that I can succeed. So that was something that I created based on getting to know them and figuring out, oh, this is something that they would really, like to do, versus having other classes who were a little bit more introverted and that would not have worked for them. Another thing that I did was tons of formative assessments. I had to formatively assess them in the classroom because I knew that they were missing a lot of prior knowledge because they did not have a strong 6th grade foundation. So in order to know where they were and to make a good decision about how I needed to approach my instruction, I had to give a lot of formative assessments, pre-test, post-test, quick writes. I used clickers. I used Google Forms. I used quizzes. Tons of different Kahoot. Tons of different ways that I could quickly assess whether or not they mastered that skill for that day. And based on the data that I got, would determine what I did the next day in class. If their data showed me 72% of them got this skill, then I would feel comfortable moving on the next day and then just making a few tweaks in maybe a bell ringer warm up or an exit ticket to help the rest of those babies that did not get it the first go round. However, if we're sitting at 56%, I'm not moving on tomorrow because what I did was not effective and those students did not master that skill. So moving on would only hurt me and them in the long run. Yes, it would push my pacing off. However, would I rather get through all the skills and them not have the information needed to be successful, or would I rather make sure that they have mastered those skills and then be successful?
To me, it's a no-brainer.
So that is just kind of like an example of what I did for a real group of students who had some real deficits, and they really performed well that year. It was one of my proudest moments as a teacher because I saw the change in them over the course of that school year. They grew to be more confident and really enjoy learning. And I credit that to these 3 things that I've talked to you guys about today, and using these 3 things to make sound, informed instructional decisions. Okay guys, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope that you were able to take something away from this video that you can use in your classroom coming up in the 2021 school year. I know we don't know what school is going to look like, and that's why these tips are even more important, because if we are going to be teaching remotely, we're going to have to make really informed instructional decisions. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and come on over to the E-Team. The E-Team? What's the E-Team? I'm so glad you asked. The E-Team is a group of energetic, enthusiastic, highly effective educators. If that's you, if that is who you are, then click that subscribe button and come on over to the E-Team. All right, guys, until next time, bye.